At Rosanna, over the last little while, we've often been starting our services with a poem or our reflections or sermons. So I wanted to start with a poem from Elizabeth Barrett Browning, um, very much thinking about the Colossians passage and a little bit about the gospel too. But this is a poem of hers. Of all that nature with a gradual step, a stir among the leaves, a breath, a ray, it came in softly while the angels made a place for it beside me. The moon came and swept my chamber clean of foolish thoughts. The sun came saying, "Shall I lift this light against the lime tree and you will not look?" I make the birds sing, listen, but for you God never hears your voice except when you lie upon the bed at nights and weep. Then something moved me. I wakened up more slowly than I write now, but wholly at last I wakened, opened wide the window in my soul, and let the airs and outdoor sights sweep gradual gospels in, regenerating what I was. Oh, life, how oft we throw it off and think enough of life in so much. Here's a cause for rupture. Herein we must break with life. And so we hide our eyes and think all ended. Then life calls to us in some transformed, apocryphal new voice, above us or below us or around us. I was shaped for a number of years in a Reformed church or Reformed tradition where we were fed a steady diet of Paul's letters most weeks. The Gospels were something of an exotic side dish, while Paul and his theology were the main course. And it seemed to me as a teenager that Paul's main beliefs centered on the doctrines of salvation and predestination. So it's been something of a surprise to take a second look at Paul in my 50s and to realize there's a lot more to him than just the doctrines of election and salvation. In fact, Paul himself was an incredibly curious person, someone who read widely and thought deeply. After his Damascus Road experience, he goes out to Arabia, perhaps Mount Sinai, for an extended period of time, and then spends as long as a decade in Tarsus, South Turkey, making tents. It's only when the call comes from Barnabas that he begins his great missionary journeys around the world. Paul is a traveller. In his book, What Paul Meant, Gary Wills writes this: Paul was by any means a heroic traveller. It's estimated that he covered 16,000 kilometres, much of it by foot. He lived in a new age of travel thanks to Roman roads and bridges engineering. Paul, later in one of his letters, talks about some of the difficulties he encounters on his travels. But he still sees the Spirit teaching him during these experiences. Travel becomes a way of seeing faith. As a great traveller, it must have pained him to have been dictating so many words from prison, trapped somewhere in the empire. He writes to the Philippians, "Not that I've already obtained this or have already reached the goal, but I press on to lay hold for that which Christ has laid hold of me." For Paul, faith is a winding track where we're walking towards home, and that home is Jesus. Faith is a journey. That's one of the themes of Colossians. A little bit earlier in the book, Paul writes, "Now that you've welcomed the Anointed One, Jesus the Lord, into your lives, continue to journey with him and allow him to shape your lives." Here in Colossians chapter 3, Paul addresses our mindset for the journey ahead. I think he's calling for a change of heart, a little bit similar to that poem from Elizabeth Barrett Browning that we began with. Now, at first glance, it might seem that what Paul wants is for us to be so heavenly minded that we're really no earthly good. He says, "So if you've been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on the things that are above, not on the things on earth, for you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God." What Paul really wants is for them to reflect Jesus. As he says in Philippians, let the same mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus. And this means letting some things go. It's a long list. I really like the translation that we had tonight. Fornication, impurity, passion, evil desire, and greed. And then anger, wrath, malice, slander, and abusive language. And then do not lie. I think in a way, these things can also easily be turned into a long list of do's and don'ts for the Mrs. Mangles, and I'm probably showing my age there, it's a neighbour's reference, for the Mrs. Mangles and Dolores Umbridges of this world. But what's the common ground between them? Sometimes spiritual insights come to us in an unusual way. A few months ago, my wife, Melissa, and I worked to piece together our broken little home at Phillip Island. That's where our place is. We'd rented the house out for a year, and then what we found after the tenant eventually left was just complete and utter disintegration. Pieces of a broken life. Sometimes we work or meet folks like that. Sometimes they're in our families. People who just seem to bring brokenness and disharmony wherever they go. They split things apart and leave a trail of destruction in their wake. I'll never forget going to church in the middle of that event. A worship leader at Rosanna played a beautiful choral piece by Jacob Collier, where all these disparate voices sing together in the Kennedy Centre. And as we heard all of these voices and harmonies coming together, I said to Melissa, I think this is what God does. God brings things together. What we've been experiencing this week is the complete opposite of that. The letter of Colossians begins by saying that the work of Jesus in our world is to bring healing from brokenness, life from death, just as he did at Easter all those years ago, and what we celebrate at communion. All things come together in Christ, Paul says. In him all things hold together. Paul's long list of things that we need to let go of all bear one thing in common. They split and divide. They disintegrate or separate. In our gospel reading, we find a man building bigger and bigger barns who's completely out of touch with the needs of those around him in his community, who I guess is completely out of touch with God. For God is a God who brings things together. Look at what comes after Paul's list in Colossians. In this renewal, there's no longer Greek or Jew, circumcised and uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave and free, but Christ is all in all. I think what Paul's saying is to walk or to practice church with the mindset that all things come together in Jesus. Discern conduct by asking, will this integrate or separate me from this person or this community? Take the journey with an open heart and a clear mind. But what does this actually look like? A few weeks ago, a friend gave me the most beautiful book, Things Become Other Things, by an American photographer, Craig Modd. And Craig travels around Japan, walking some of the old pilgrimage paths between temples and mountains. And towards the end of his journey, he writes this about an encounter with Seamus the priest. And this is what he says. Finally, I make it off the mountain and over the mighty Kumano River to a bus stop I'd staked out on a map. The skies had fully cracked and down the rain came. I'm breaking my walking only rule, taking a bus. That's how thoroughly exhausted I am at the end of this journey. I can't handle the thought of hiking over one more pass. And then he appears, Seamus the Irish priest, lumbering across the highway towards me as I check and double check the schedule. Konnichiwa, he says. Doku iku. Sorry, my Japanese isn't very good. I squint and say Hongu, and he says, oh, just get in. We'll get you there. The bus is coming any minute, but Seamus won't have it. Get in. It's down the road. He came to Japan in 1967, sent on assignment for the church. It was no trouble at all to drive me. You're a great man, Craig, a great man. You're a mad man, but a great man. I can see it all over your dripping self, this mad greatness. It's a wonderful thing now, madness, isn't it? I tell him where the walk had started, hundreds of kilometres away, weeks back. Oh, you're absolutely mad, but you're a powerful man too. I was once a powerful man, he says, downshifting as we enter a tunnel. But I just turned 80 and those days are far behind me. I used to ride motorcycles, rode all across Europe, rode to India to those ashrams. It's a miracle I'm still alive. We grab lunch together. I buy Seamus a coffee as thanks for the lift, and we cover almost everything two people can talk about in an hour. We talk about small-scale trust and trust at large and the beauty of the world, and wonder why it's so hard for people to see the beauty. For too long, Seamus says, the church made this world to be out to be a place of sin with the wonder stashed up above, when the wonder lay here among us all along. Palliative an encounter like this. I learned more sitting in silence with Seamus for 5 minutes than I had from my father in over a decade. Stack 1,000 moments like this together, and you might begin to heal a heart. Eventually, Seamus finishes his coffee and stands up. He puts on his jacket and comes around the table, and before I know what's happening, he gives me a great big bear hug. I feel dizzy, elated, heartbroken, crushed, favoured by luck and favoured by misfortune. He pulls away and grasps my hands with both his giant paws and shakes them with vigour, pulling me back into my body and now saying, "You're a great man, Craig, a great man. Turn toward it all. You are stronger than you think. It's an honour to meet you, and I wish you continued peace." His simple blessing like an ice bath, coolness spreading throughout my body from the centre, like the whole of the day, maybe the whole of the walk, was leading to this beacon of safety for us both, to this encounter in the rain on the side of the road, to this unexpected benediction. Seamus to me sounds a lot like Jesus, who meets us on the road, who is open to every part of the journey bearing discoveries, who loves us, who heals us, who is to be found in community, and who promises to walk with us always, even to the very end of the age. And I just wanted to finish with one final poem. This was actually a poem that Sylvia sent to me a number of years ago for a different part of the journey that I was on. And it's just a lovely poem about finding God in every part and every aspect of life. And it's called Desert Dreams. All my bright dreams crystalline lie shattered, mocking the evening sun. Dream no more, crystal soul. Risk no more broken edges, jagged to cut bare feet. Dream paper mache, dream Indian rubber, dream mud. No, dream on in, crystal soul. Gather these shining fragments carefully and build wind chimes, fragments of haunting failure, making melody to move the evening sun. And may God bless us all in all the different journeys that we'll undertake this week together.